What's up guys, do not even try here. Today we are doing something a bit different than usual. As some of you may know, I am a huge fan of war movies, and there's one movie that I think is subject to some unwarranted criticism. That movie is Fury by David Ayer and Columbia Pictures. Listen guys, I know, the movie is highly historically inaccurate. Some bits make absolutely no sense in a purely historical point of view, but the movie is, in my opinion, the single best depiction of what war does to men. How it creates unbreakable bonds between the soldiers, turning them into a family more than a platoon or crew members, and how disgusting, cruel, and unnecessary war truly is. And yes, I know, some people are going to come with other movies such as Saving Private Ryan and others, claiming them to be better depictions. While I do love and admire these movies, not a single one of them has shown these types of things better than Ayer's Fury. The movie could have been about a junior hockey team, a group of policemen, or a bomber crew. The story would have been the same. Before being a tale of tankers, it is a tale of brotherhood. The film is not without its faults though. As said previously, it falls into easy historical traps, such as Sherman's being death traps and how the Germans had much better equipment than the Allies. Yes, I see you, Mr. Weirbo in the back. And the movie is far from perfect, and this is why I propose that today we try to fix this already amazing piece of cinema and see how we could have made it even slightly better. Also, side note, as the movie is heavily copyrighted, I'll have to use screenshots instead of footage from the movie. Oh, thank you, YouTube! This is Improving Fury. For the sake of the video, I've decided to only concentrate on three major points. The setting in which the movie takes place, Don War Daddy's origin, and Fury itself. The setting in which Fury takes place is Germany, April 1945, during the last dying days of the Third Reich. The movie tries to show us how precarious the situation is, showing that the Americans had no supplies and barely any men, which doesn't make any sense because America's Germany campaign was basically like this.
That's right! You stupid crowd bastards! That's right! Say hello to Ford and General fucking Motors! You stupid fascist pigs!
And yes, I know some people will point out that Germany wasn't all easy and that sometimes the opposition did get fierce on the Western Front. But as a rule of thumb, this is what the German campaign for the US was like. During the invasion of Germany, and especially during the last dying days of the Reich, the Germans simply couldn't stop the Allied advance. To the total opposite of the Americans, they had literally no supplies, nothing. Meanwhile, the US had immense supply lines, never missing anything, ammo, food, personnel, etc. Talking about personnels, that alone makes the character of Private Allison completely irrelevant, because in April of 45, the Americans would have had replacement bow machine gunners immediately, and would not have had to rely on typewriters with no experience to do the job. With that out of the way, there's one campaign where the US did have these shortcomings, and did miss food, ammo, and personnel. The Battle of the Bulge. If you ask me, the Battle of the Bulge would have made for a much better setting for the story. Let me explain. In winter of 1944, Hitler, in a last-ditch effort, tried to push back the thinly held American line in Belgium, had encircled and destroyed the American forces. During the battle, the Americans saw their supply lines completely cut off and saw their men dying one after the other, without being able to replace them. Where a typewriter, like Private Allison, could have had more chance to be thrown into the tank as a replacement. It is also during this battle that the Allies saw one of the biggest concentration of German tanks on the Western Front for the whole war, which would have given our protagonist a much bigger chance to actually encountering a working Tiger tank, while it was virtually non-existent in Germany of 1945 on the American side. Yes, this change comes with production issues. The United Kingdom, where Fury was filmed, is far from having the same climate as the Ardennes, and moving the only working Tiger I tank in the world with 5 Shermans, trucks and armored cars is virtually impossible, and too high of a risk. So they would have had to film in the UK. That is far from a problem. The 1965 movie The Battle of the Bulge was filmed entirely in Italy, where the climate is even further from the Ardennes, and with a budget more than 10 times lower than 1965's technology. They still pulled a very convincing Ardennes forest, which could have even been made better in 2014. Okay, so this one is purely from a narrative point of view and has nothing to do with history. In a deleted scene, just after leaving the small town, War Daddy starts to open up to Norman about his pasts and tells, after being asked by Norman, the origins of his burns. How he was fleeing from the police after drinking too much and starting a fight, and was drunk driving with his girlfriend, Rose, and his little brother, who just happens to be named Norman. He was sent into the US Army after the incident, which left his back completely burned. While touching and creating depth to Don's character, I would have completely changed the narrative of the scene to make it more centered around the story of Fury. Here's how I would have written the scene. Don, after his enlistment into the US Armored Corps, is sent with the men he trained with in the first combats the Americans fought in North Africa. They fight well, and Don starts to gain medals and confidence. Too much confidence. They go through Africa and end up in Italy, where they start encountering even fiercer resistance from the Axis. And in an act of overconfidence, Don overexposes his tanks, getting it shot and destroyed, losing his entire crew, with him barely escaping the burning remains of his tank, and having his back severely burned. After that, he will recover and be sent back into action with a new crew. Gordo, Grady, Bible, and Red, who will eventually be killed in action and replaced by Norman. And it would be at this instance that War Daddy will promise to him and his crew that he will make everything to keep them alive and eventually form a massive bond with them. This is just a detail, but I feel like it would have made Brad Pitt's character even more compelling. If you ask me, it would have made him even much more interesting than just being an idiot that drank too much and accidentally killed everyone he loved. Okay, now this part is for y'all tank lovers, so strap in because I'm about to throw some heavy tank knowledge on you. In the movie, Fury is shown to be an M4A276W HVSS, portrayed to be an M4A3. As said previously, Fury is armed with a 76mm M1, which is designed to give the Sherman a bigger punch against German armor. That, in and of itself, is not a problem. As said previously, the movie bites into easily avoidable historical myths, and more particularly into the fact that the Shermans needed to hit the rear of the Tiger to kill it. But Fury is armed with a 76mm gun, which doesn't need to flank the Tiger I to kill it, as it could penetrate it frontally at a kilometer away, where the normal 75mm M3 couldn't. So what I would have done for the sake of this very scene only is change Fury from an Easy 8 to a normal 75mm Sherman. The Tiger scene could have played out exactly the same way, with the exception of Fury being in second position in the platoon and having a 75mm gun. The first tank, an Easy 8, would be destroyed first, as it was the standard procedure to stop a tank platoon in the German army. The Tiger staying in position as it did not need to move, and Fury having to flank the German tank and ending up killing it. That small detail of simply switching tanks could have made one of the most controversial scenes in war movies history much more realistic and accurate. To conclude, Fury is an amazing movie. It should be watched with a grain of salt, but overall the film is incredible and should be watched by anyone interested in World War II or simply likes good movies in general. This was Do Not Even Try from the channel Nomad Prod, and I will see you next time.